History remembers the victors, but every legend has a story. The old king stared in disbelief. Before him stood a wild black horse that had thrown every rider to the ground. Nobles laughed. Generals shook their heads. "No one can tame that beast," one man declared. Then a skinny boy stepped forward. "I can." The crowd erupted in laughter. The boy was only 13 years old. What happened next would convince an entire kingdom that he was destined to conquer the world. His name was Alexander. And one day, the world would tremble at the sound of it. The horse reared violently. Its eyes flashed with fear. King Philip frowned. "Alexander, stand back." But the boy didn't move. Instead, he studied the animal carefully. Everyone else saw a monster. Alexander saw something different. Fear. The horse wasn't angry. It was terrified of its own shadow. Slowly, Alexander turned the horse toward the sun. The shadow disappeared. The animal calmed. The crowd fell silent. Then, in one smooth motion, Alexander leaped onto its back. Gasps echoed across the field. The horse bolted forward. Dust exploded into the air. For several terrifying moments, nobody knew whether the prince would survive. Then, he returned, riding proudly, in complete control. King Philip's eyes filled with tears. "My son," he whispered, "Macedonia is too small for you. You must find a kingdom worthy of your ambition." Nobody realized then how prophetic those words would become. Years passed. Alexander grew into a brilliant warrior. His father united Greece and prepared for the greatest invasion in history. Then disaster struck. The royal celebration was packed with nobles, soldiers, and guests. Music filled the air. Suddenly, a scream, a flash of steel. King Philip collapsed. Blood spread across the ground. The assassin ran. Chaos erupted. Some shouted, others fled. The king was dead. And at only 20 years old, Alexander became ruler. But many believed his reign would be short. Very short. "He's just a boy." The words spread like wildfire. Neighboring kingdoms prepared to rebel. Greek cities sensed weakness. Even some Macedonian nobles plotted against him. Alexander knew hesitation meant death. He summoned his generals. "What should we do?" one asked. Alexander's answer chilled the room. "We strike first." Within months, rebellions were crushed. Enemies disappeared. Cities surrendered. One by one, those who doubted him learned a painful lesson. Alexander wasn't his father. He was far more dangerous. Beyond Greece stood the greatest empire on earth, the Persian Empire. Its ruler, King Darius III, commanded hundreds of thousands of soldiers. His wealth was unimaginable. His power seemed unstoppable. When Alexander announced he would invade Persia, many believed he had lost his mind. One advisor spoke bluntly, "You cannot defeat Persia." Alexander smiled. "Then Persia will be my greatest victory." And with that, he marched into history. The Persian army stretched across the horizon. Soldiers, archers, cavalry, thousands upon thousands, a sea of men. One Macedonian soldier swallowed nervously. "We're outnumbered." Alexander drew his sword. "Good," he replied. "It means we'll find the enemy more easily." Laughter rippled through the ranks. Fear vanished. The charge began. The earth shook beneath galloping horses. Arrows darkened the sky. Steel crashed against steel. Men screamed. And through the chaos rode Alexander, straight toward King Darius himself. The Persian ruler watched in horror. Alexander was coming directly for him, closer, closer, closer. Then, Darius turned and fled. The sight shattered Persian morale. The impossible had happened. The greatest empire on earth was collapsing. Imagine changing the course of history before turning 30. If you're enjoying this cinematic journey through history, Take a second to like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who loves epic stories. Every subscription helps us bring more legendary figures and forgotten empires to life. Now, Alexander's greatest victories were still ahead of him. Victory followed victory. Egypt welcomed him as a hero. Cities opened their gates. Kings surrendered. Treasures filled his coffers. Legends grew around his name. Some called him a god. Others called him invincible. And slowly, Alexander began to believe them. That belief would change everything. Years later, Alexander stood at the edge of India. His soldiers were exhausted. They had marched for nearly a decade, fought countless battles, buried countless friends. Yet Alexander wanted more. "There are kingdoms beyond these mountains," he said. "We continue." Silence. No cheers. No applause. Finally, one veteran stepped forward. "No." The word hit harder than any enemy sword. Alexander stared at his men. For the first time in his life, they refused to follow him. Alexander turned back. Months later, he arrived in Babylon, still undefeated, still the ruler of the largest empire the world had ever seen. Then one night, he developed a fever. Days passed. The fever worsened. His generals gathered around his bed. "Who will inherit the empire?" they asked. Alexander struggled to speak. According to legend, he whispered, "To the strongest." Then he closed his eyes, forever. He was only 32 years old. The conqueror was gone. But his greatest battle was about to begin. Without Alexander, his generals turned against one another. Friendships shattered, empires burned, armies marched, and the kingdom he spent a lifetime building would soon be torn apart by greed, betrayal, and war. The age of Alexander had ended. The age of chaos was about to begin. To be continued. If this story amazed you, subscribe for more unforgettable journeys through history. Until next time, keep discovering the past.